So you're listening because you want to cut through the noise, right? Get to what really matters fast. And, well, that's pretty much our goal here.
Exactly. Streamline it.
Right. So today we're diving into the audio overview for Violeta Digital. Think of it as our sort of constilled guide to what seems like a really complex mix of
technology, ideology, justice. All that in our super connected world.
Yeah, exactly that.
Right. So we've gone through that audio overview, pulled out the key bits, the main story points, the themes, and the sort of underlying questions Violeta Digital seems to be asking. So you get the essence.
Okay, let's jump in then. The audio itself, it starts off painting this really evocative picture. Uses phrases like truth being coded and this idea of empires challenged by digital whispers. It immediately sets a scene where justice isn't just fought in courts anymore.
Right. The battlefield's shifted, or at least expanded, into the digital space.
And that intro music they use, it's got these sharp, kind of tense electronic sounds, but also this melancholy undercurrent. It really creates a specific mood straight away, doesn't it? What did you make of that combo?
Yeah, that mix is interesting, the urgency from the electronics, but then that sadness, that melancholy. It kind of hints that maybe the conflict, even though it's digital, has real human costs, high stakes.
High stakes, yeah. And maybe victories aren't always clean wins.
Potentially. It suggests a weight behind the actions, not just code on a screen. Makes you think about the people involved.
Well, speaking of people involved, this is where it gets really fascinating. The overview says Violeta Digital isn't just made up, it's inspired by a real story.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the sad, unbelievable yet true story, they call it, of Alberto Daniel Hill, apparently the first hacker ever imprisoned in Uruguay.
Wow, okay, so a fictional story but grounded in a specific historical event.
Exactly, that immediately adds, another layer, makes it feel more weighty.
Definitely. Knowing it's tied to a real person, a real hacking case, it pushes you to think about the real-world parallels and the ethics around that kind of digital action. It's not just theoretical then.
Right.
It makes you wonder, how much of Hill's actual story is in there? What parts are they focusing on?
Good question. And the main character they describe, a brilliant cybersecurity expert, but he's scarred by injustice. That's the phrase they use.
Yeah.
And he gets pulled into fighting corruption.
Okay, so a protagonist with a personal motivation.
Yeah, and this guiding principle, human knowledge belongs to the world. That jumped out at me. That's a powerful idea driving someone. What could that mean in the story?
That principle is huge. Human knowledge belongs to the world. It's almost like an open source philosophy for everything. It immediately sets up potential conflict, right? With anyone trying to control or restrict information, governments, corporations.
Absolutely.
So it raises ethical questions straight away. Is it okay to break rules or laws if you genuinely believe in that principle? Where's the line?
And it sounds like the story dives right into that ambiguity. It doesn't seem like a simple good guy versus bad guy thing. The overview talks about gray areas, where righteous protest can become dangerous vigilantism, and even victories can feel like defeats.
Yeah, that complexity seems key. It suggests they're not shying away from the messy parts, the unintended consequences, the moral compromises maybe.
Right.
The idea that winning might come at a cost, or maybe what looks like a win isn't really. It suggests a much more nuanced look at things than just hackers good, system bad, or vice versa.
Definitely. And it's not purely technical either. They make a point of saying it explores the human element within the machine.
Okay.
And things like the intoxicating power of information and, crucially, the devastating costs of defiance.
So grounding the technology in human experience?
Exactly. Even though it's about code and networks, the focus seems to be on the people, the motivations, the consequences for them. Does that make it hit harder, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Connecting it back to the human side, the pull of power, even information power, the desire for justice, the sacrifices people make, that makes it much more relatable than just talking about abstract tech concepts. Yeah. You engage with the dilemmas personally, not just intellectually.
And it feels like all these different threads, the tech, the real story, the ethics, the human cost, they all kind of lead to this one big question. The overview says, Violeta Digital asks,
It should.
When official channels fail, can illegal actions be justified?
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That's the core.
Yeah. It's pretty provocative, isn't it? It really forces you to consider, well, what happens when the system doesn't work? When do people feel they have to step outside it?
That is a powerful central question. It taps into so many debates we have about like the rule of law versus individual conscience or civil disobedience.
Right.
And putting it in a tech context makes it even more relevant today. Digital tools offer different ways to take those illegal actions, ways that are harder to trace maybe.
Yeah, raises all sorts of new legal and ethical tangles.
Exactly. Where is that boundary between legitimate protests, maybe using digital tools, and actions that just go too far? It forces that question.
And then, after posing that big question, the overview kind of shifts gears. It ends with this very direct invitation to the listener or reader.
The call to action bit.
Yeah. Dare to enter the flame, uncover the secrets, question everything, read Violeta Digital, and then, available now wherever books are sold.
So it loops back to those themes. Risk-taking, enter the flame. Finding hidden truth, uncover secrets. Critical thinking, question everything.
Nicely put. It reinforces the whole mood.
And that final sound they mentioned, the outro music, just a brief, impactful electronic sound, final keyboard tap.
Yeah.
Like closing the laptop after the mission or maybe sending the final command, leaves you hanging a bit maybe, gives a sense of finality, but also leaves you thinking.
So let's try and wrap up what we've gathered from this deep dive into just the audio overview. What are the main takeaways about Violeta Digital?
Okay, well, it seems to be a story right at the intersection of technology and justice, heavily influenced by that real-world hacker story from Uruguay, which gives it weight.
Right, the Alberto Daniel Hill connection.
Yeah. And it explores the complexities of hacktivism, digital protest, those gray areas we talked about.
Where things aren't black and white.
Exactly. And it emphasizes the human motivations behind it all and the real consequences. It's not just about the tech itself.
And ultimately, it throws down that challenge, that central question about questioning authority and whether illegal actions can ever be justified if the system fails you.
Precisely. It looks like it avoids giving easy answers. It's more about exploring the ambiguities when tech gets tangled up in ideology and this fight for what people see as justice.
It balances that sort of tech thriller intrigue with some pretty deep ethical questions.
Yeah, and questions about morality, the impact of our choices online and offline.
So for you listening, hopefully this gives you a really clear picture of what Violeta Digital is setting out to do based on its own introduction. Sounds like it could appeal if you're interested in, current events around tech and activism, but also stories that make you think about the ethics involved.
Which leads us to maybe a final thought, something for you to chew on that goes a bit beyond just this overview. In this world we live in now, so shaped by digital actions, where do you personally see those lines blurring? Between what feels like justified defiance online and what crosses over into dangerous vigilantism, and maybe more importantly, what shapes your view on where that line actually is.